Welcome to NTD Canada Weekly News. I'm Don Ma. Let's get into this week's topics. Canadians continue to worry about economic stability as prices soar. In the last episode, we discussed how serious this inflation is. Next, we will analyze how much longer it could last and what we should do about it. Please stay tuned for a special report. On October 27th, the Bank of Canada released a statement saying the main forces pushing up prices, higher energy prices, and pandemic-related supply bottlenecks now appear to be stronger and more persistent than expected. The bank now expects CPI inflation to be elevated into next year and ease back to around the 2% target by late 2022. Decades of globalization caused more and more manufacturing to move to Asia. This, along with work halts and poor logistics caused by the pandemic, are affecting supply chains and driving up prices. TD Bank economist Suri Thanabalasingham is a bit more pessimistic than the central bank. Back when inflation first started climbing, everyone thought it wouldn't last. But now, Suri said in an interview with CBC News that it could last until the second half of 2022. But it's very uncertain right now. Tony Clement, a former federal conservative cabinet minister, is lobbying hard to return manufacturing jobs to Canada to secure a strong economic recovery and resolve supply chain disruptions once and for all. He thinks the current supply chain interruptions is bad, but it could get worse if US and China relations continue to deteriorate. The supply chain crisis that followed the pandemic exposed the downside of globalization. It accelerated the process of deglobalization. A recent survey by Thomas Insights, an organization that helps companies track parts suppliers, said 83% of North American manufacturers are finding ways to source raw materials closer to home, compared to 54% in 2020. Countries like the United States and Japan now consider more products strategic, for example, masks, medicines, and semiconductors. They're working hard to drive manufacturing back home, which means it will take longer to restructure the global supply chain. That's exactly what Tony Clement is striving for in Canada. Supply chain restructuring takes longer and requires additional investment. The increase in restocking and labor costs may also drive up the price of products. After decades of globalization, China, the world's largest exporter, is seen by developed countries as a rival rather than a trading partner. The United States and the Chinese Communist Party have entered a period of full competition. Larry Fink, chairman and CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset management firm, believes that deglobalization will lead to systematically more inflation in the future. So are there factors other than energy and supply chain issues that have contributed to today's inflation? And if so, how long will these factors persist? The lack of a consistent, reliable energy supply is not only due to the reduction in production caused by the pandemic. Tough government regulations to move toward a green future have also exacerbated the issue. Reuters calls this greenflation. For example, Quebec has rejected a nearly 10-year-old liquefied natural gas station and is considering a permanent ban on all oil and gas development. A proposed pipeline from Alberta to the east has been rejected, and foreign tankers are transporting oil to Quebec. Canadian pipelines exporting oil to the United States are also facing challenges. U.S. President Joe Biden has shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has said she wants to shut down Enbridge's No. 5 pipeline. COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Scotland in late October, aims to accelerate the reduction of fossil fuel use and reach net zero carbon emissions in a few decades. In the article, Epoch Times columnist Corey Morgan said that the price of fossil fuels will be terribly high in the future if alternate energy resources do not meet demand. Corey Morgan said, "One day, we may indeed transition fully away from fossil fuel use and into renewable means of energy generation. But it's crystal clear that we aren't there yet." And labor shortages are pushing up wages. The Bank of Canada surveyed about 100 companies from mid-August to mid-September. The companies said government revenue support, health issues, and demographic and technological changes are contributing to a worsening labor shortage. 57% of respondents expect to see labor costs increase next year. And of course, they said they will pass these costs on to their customers. Recruiters are finding that in many industries, it is now a seller's market for both skilled and unskilled candidates. Tanya Cerniwick, head of Canadian sales for global human resources firm Attico Group, told Reuters, "I'm seeing increases in labor wage rates anywhere from 10% to 40%. Tiff Macklem, governor of the Bank of Canada, doesn't see a significant rise in wages. On October 24th, he told Reuters, "If you look at the various wage indicators, they're actually still slightly below where they were before the pandemic." According to Statistics Canada, wages rose 1.7% year over year in September, compared with 4.3% in February before 2020, just before the outbreak. Cerniwick noted that due to the ongoing uncertainty caused by the outbreak, some companies are reluctant to raise wages, instead offering generous bonuses based on attendance, for example, which may not be seen as wage increases. If the central bank issues too much money, money will depreciate in value. However, these effects will not necessarily be immediately visible. Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman said, "Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon in the sense that it is and can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output." In Canada, the supply of money was growing at a rate of over 25% annually when the pandemic began, according to Deutsche Bank's analysis. Starting in April 2020, with the increased supply, the Bank of Canada was buying at least $5 billion worth of bonds per week. Although the number of purchases has since declined, the rate of growth is still in the fastest in the past 25 years. The Bank of Canada announced that it is keeping its bond holdings unchanged. Adam Slater, chief economist at Oxford Economics, said in an October 26th research note, "Most analysis suggests that the peak inflation impact from monetary surges comes only around 2 years after they occur. On this basis, we may be some way away from seeing the full effect yet." During the pandemic, Canadian households were not eager to spend money as everyone feared economic turmoil, which led to huge savings. According to Statistics Canada, the savings rate for Canadian households has increased dramatically over the past year or so. The International Monetary Fund estimated in October that Canadian households had accumulated an additional $280 billion in extra savings during the pandemic, which is equivalent to more than 10% of Canada's annual GDP. While some of this has been used to pay down debt, buy a home, or invest, there are still significant cash reserves in accounts. The huge amount of savings provides a temporary cushion against inflation. Jean-Paul Lam, a professor of economics at the University of Waterloo, said, "We don't see huge excess demand in terms of goods and services in Canada. I don't think the money supply is the big story right now." But RBC economist Claire Fan has expressed concern about when Canadian households will spend those savings. Fan cited in an article, "The sizable cache of overall savings will add substantial upside to growth and inflation risks if spending increases come faster than expected." Economist Nurio Rubini, known for his pessimistic and accurate predictions of the 2008 financial crisis, in his recent op-ed, "Goldilocks is Dying," said that he is concerned that inflation will remain high as supply chain dislocations are eliminated and economic growth accelerates. This is because the combination of high saving rates and loose monetary and fiscal policies will further increase market demand. So Rubini concluded the resulting growth would be associated with persistent above-target inflation. We are in the middle of this inflation that will last until the second half of next year or longer, and there is no escape. So how do we respond? In part 3, we will take a look at what investment experts have to say. And that's all for today's topic. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.